everyone, I'm back and I'm just gonna be talking and drawing. This entire video is gonna be about this character, this drawing, and about DnD because she is my solo DnD character. I asked around if people were fine with this and they seem to be fine with it. It's probably not gonna get as many views, but who cares? She is my solo DnD character and I've been having a lot of fun just playing D&D by myself, playing it with my sister, and I've been having this itch to just tell someone about it and talk about what's been happening in my solo D&D sessions. And I don't want to annoy my friends and family about Dungeons & Dragons, so here I am dedicating an entire video to it because I just need to let it out, just scratch that itch and let it out. So I actually sketched this on Procreate. I'll probably show the time lapse for that right here very quickly. Later on I moved it to speedpaint and lined it and colored it there. Although the brunt of this piece was just a whole lot of rendering. So I might speed up the lining process and just get to the coloring process so I could slow that down, get it closer to real time so you can see more of that basically. But I've been talking about it a lot on my channel, D&D. I've gone into it this year and I've just been further getting into it, but I have a lot of anxiety with group situations, especially when learning something, and I'm still really new to D&D 5e specifically and just role playing in general. So I'm I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm going to be uncomfortable and I'm gonna have worries and anxieties going into a session because of the other people that are gonna be playing with me. So I've been just playing with my sister. My sister's not into it as much as I am, so I was like, you know what? Is there a way for me to play by myself? Because the way that I've been enjoying D&D lately is seeing it as almost like a writing method, because I like to write stories, and I've been thinking about I want to take the characters and some of the stories that I've created and I want to turn them into D&D, where it feels more like playing a game than it does just sitting down and typing. Creating stories is really fun, but writing isn't. It feels like work. It feels like a chore. Because sometimes you just want to get the story out there. You don't want to have to worry about formatting it into an actual narrative or an actual thing that sounds like a book, and you just want to talk about it sometimes. So I tried solo D&D. I looked for multiple ways to do it. I found out about the Solo Adventures Toolbox, Solo Adventures guide, and I tried them and it worked out for the most part for a couple of sessions, and then I started to kind of struggle with it. And so I started trying out the Mythic GM emulator, and that has been really working for me. I've 5 sessions in. It's been really fun. And so the character that I made for my solo D&D is this girly here named Eleanor Thorne. She's actually a character who already existed in a story that I was writing, which was set in Victorian London. She was originally just a background character in the story. You know how in stories how there always tends to be a background character who is really interesting and you wish you could know more about them, but then you never really do because they're not the main character. And that is what Eleanor was in this story. And I was thinking I am really interested in her. And you know what if she did become the main character? And so I placed her into my solo D&D world, and I kind of constructed my solo D&D world around this character. I know normally the process for D&D is supposed to be you come up with a setting for the campaign first, and then you make the character around the setting, but then I did it the other way around. So I homebrewed a region in my D&D universe called Mistwind, and it's going to be extremely similar to Victorian London. So I wanted to take the concept of there being a secret magical city in a mundane, normal world and reverse it, do the opposite of it. So, what if within the super magical and fantastical world of, DnD, there was a kingdom that was just purely non-magical and it was kind of a secret. And in that kingdom or region, the residents are kept in the dark about the existence of monsters and magic. And it's basically if a chunk of Victorian London, non-magical Victorian London, was plopped into the material realm. And it was just this region, this kind of like bubble of non-magical life. And that is where this character, Eleanor Thorne, is going to be from. And I'm calling it Mistwind because it's like as if the people are kind of like hidden behind a mist and clouded from the existence of magic. And because Mistwind has the same vibe of the Victorian era, the same culture restrictions and stuff, and it's that because I love the Victorian era. I love reading historical romance, where there's commoners, there's aristocrats, high society, rules of propriety. There's a like clear division in rich versus poor. The rich people have balls, they have elegant dinners, all of that stuff. And that is how Miss Wind is. And Eleanor is a lady of high society. She's a rich girl, basically. And there's a lot more details to it and her background, but essentially, because Miss Wind has the culture of Victorian London, she's expected to maintain appearances, have a good reputation, act prim and proper, wear nice dresses, and all that. Because that's a culture of high society and aristocratic life. But Eleanor's not about that life, and she's constantly getting into trouble for breaking the rules. And she's the type of character who just is like running around every day, getting into antics. I don't know, like pretending to be people. Like she's like that type of character who's just constantly getting into whatever type of stuff. And that is the type of character she was in my original story, where she was kind of like the bad influence type of character. Normally in stories like Twilight, Vampire Diaries, Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, whatever, the characters find out about this fantasy world, and that is what I want to happen to Eleanor, because she doesn't know what magic is, because she lives in Mistwind, which is this non-magical world. And I want her to find out about magic and eventually become an adventurer who kind of works to protect her home from monsters, because let's say Mistwind is constantly being under threat from monsters and people who want to ruin the relative peace within Mistwind. And the leaders of Mistwind, who are probably people who are aware about magic, they are actively trying to hide magic from the residents, but they're also at the same time constantly fighting to protect it from the threats of the outside world. Because I kind of envision Mistwind to be like a safe haven, where it's like almost like advertised as like, come live in this place where you can be safe from monsters and safe from the dangers of curses and whatever. But the price is that you have to get your memories wiped of magic, and you have to live without it, because that it like I feel like the person who like created Mistwind has a philosophy that magic is like the scourge of the world or whatever. I don't know if I use that word right, but it's like magic is like the curse of the land, and it's the source of all danger, and they wanted to create a place without it, because that is like their idyllic world that is safe, is without magic. Okay, I'm getting a little bit too into it, but a lot of the lore so far hasn't really been figured out yet, and I feel like that's the beauty of solo D&D, is that you don't have to flesh everything out yet, and you kind of just you wait as you go along to figure out the lore as you ask the oracle about stuff, so that just like how PCs would be surprised by lore drops when the DM talks about it in a normal game, you're also as surprised as the characters when new information is revealed because you are interpreting the answers from the oracle. But I'm not going to get too far into that. But yeah, so a lot of the lore has been figured out. I don't know. I don't know if any of this is interesting to you guys, but yeah, my intention is to kind of set up that story and then eventually get Eleanor to a point where she turns into an adventurer who goes out and protects Mistwind. She protects her home, you know, so that she can go back home and go to balls and dinners, do stuff that high society does, and she almost like lives a double life. But when she has that itch to like just do something more exciting, she goes out on an adventure. And she almost reminds me of a young Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. I didn't really base her off of her or anything like that. She just ended up being similar to her. You know, she's just a person who has a heart for adventure and learning. I actually gave her the sage background. So she's constantly wanting to like learn about stuff, and she's happy when she like finds new information, and she will actively search for information in a lot of scenarios. Yeah, like she's a character who wants to learn about everything. She wants to try everything out. She has like 100 different hobbies, and I think it's pretty perfect for being the main character of a campaign. And because this is solo D&D, there is a main character. You know, it makes it a little easier for me because her personality already gives context as to why she's going on a bunch of different adventures. And I'm sitting here just hoping that everything that I'm saying like makes sense, because it's hard to explain the context of my solo D&D world without going into it too much. And I know this video is supposed to be dedicated to it anyway, but I just can't help but feeling none of it makes sense, especially if you don't know anything about D&D. But I'm not sure why you're watching this if you don't know about D&D. But you know, like I guess like talking about it now, like it makes me think about the thought that I've been having about turning it into an actual play or an episodic series where I actually like get to talk about the story and what's happening to the characters. Maybe I straight up just like play the sessions out in a recording, but that sounds a little daunting for me because I'm not that great at RPing, and I'm still like really new to D&D 5e. I probably get a bunch of rules wrong, and I probably do a lot of things wrong because I just have a bunch of house rules since I'm just trying to have fun. And I don't know if that would be like good enough to watch or listen to on YouTube. And yeah, I'm not that great at role playing, so it would probably be really cringe, at least like when I think about it now. So for now, you know, when I record my sessions, I'm the only one who gets to hear it. But I don't know, like it has me describing this world and this character so far. Has that even been interesting enough, you know, for you to be interested in something like that? Because maybe if enough people are interested in it, I can do a trial, which is a big if and maybe. You know, I wouldn't be so like against the idea because there's a huge part of me that just really wants to share this with people, which is why I'm talking about it now. Like I want to share this character. I want people to be invested in this character as much as I am. It's the reason why I am a character designer, you know, why I want to make characters is because I want to shape them into something that people are interested in and invested in and that can have discussions about and all that stuff. So I don't know, maybe this is finally like the way that I can do that. I don't know. It's a big maybe. So let me know what you think in the comments. So I asked on Twitter and YouTube, kind of like a Q&A, questions that people might have about Eleanor, just from seeing her, or D&D in general, and some art questions too. So I'm going to answer some of them. The first one is, what are some of the inspirations that you drew on for her design and her personality? I kind of went off of I just knew that I wanted a character to be very sporadic, very chaotic, unhinged, when I first created her for the original story that I was writing. And then from there, I started coming up with design stuff for her. I've always associated red hair color with you know, kind of chaos. And when I was writing her into the story, I would always describe her as like this woman with a Freddy voice, or maybe Freddy is too much, but this lady with a fiery hairstyle. Like even though it's put up into a bun, there's so many loose strands that it still looks messy. Like that is the type of character that she is. And I was just going off of that vibe. Not much thought went into like her outfit either. I just knew I wanted her hair to be looking fiery or whatever, so I put a gradient in it. She would be wearing some type of dress that would look, you know, like it belonged to a D&D world or some of that type of world. And I wanted her facial expressions to really show that she is an excitable character, you know, very out there and kind of loud and extroverted, right? And I guess I talked about it before. Now that I think about it, she really reminds me of Miss Frizzle a lot. Like if Miss Frizzle was a D&D character. I don't know. But for the most part, yeah. I mean, for her personality, I'm not sure. There is a book that I had read. I don't remember the title of it. It might have been Dreaming by Jane Barnett, I think. And I'm too lazy to look it up right now. But where the main character, the female character, she was a person who just was prone to like accidents. The male character, which is her love interest, they are connected because anytime she gets herself into trouble, it somehow always involves hurting him. So like she's like broken his foot so many times, or like she has a dog who like keeps like biting him, and like they're constantly getting put into situations where she's making trouble. I mean, she's not doing it on purpose, but it's almost like as if she's cursed to constantly be in chaotic situations. And I took inspiration from that because that's how I want Eleanor to be. But Eleanor's is different in that most of the time the situations happen to her because it was intentional. Like it's not like accidental or anything. Like she's like fully like, yes, I want to be put into an interesting situation right now because like her greatest fear is having a boring life or something like that. And I kind of wanted her to have the same dynamic with another character where there is a male character who she is constantly kind of dragging into trouble along with her. And I will talk about him later because I did make a character like that who's gonna be her best friend. But I'm gonna just answer more questions about her specifically for now. Another person asked, what is her class and how did I decide what class and subclass? So she's level 1 so far, so I don't know what her subclass is gonna be yet, but I just made her a bard so far. It was a little difficult because, you know, at the moment she doesn't know what magic is. I don't exactly know what her relationship with magic is going to be yet. I just know that I want her to be a caster. So either a bard, a wizard, a sorcerer, or what's the other one? I forgot the other one. Warlock. And I'm like, I don't think she would be a sorcerer, right? Because sorcerers are sorcerers because they have some like inherent quality about them that makes them magical. And I don't think that's something with her. So I was thinking, okay, she's probably either a wizard because she's a sage and she really likes to learn about things, or she's a bard because she has that like bardic thing about her character where she's very chaotic and unhinged, and she just feels like a bard, right? And so I landed on bard at the moment because there's stuff that I can use with it even before she learns about magic. So I'm making her a bard that is like an actor type of person who disguises themselves a lot, and it has high deception, high persuasion, you know, just high charisma, because that's kind of gonna be what she's doing a lot in Mistwind outside of like the dangerous adventures, right? Who knows? Maybe I'll change her later on. I'll change her into a wizard or something. So far she's kind of a just hovering, you know, she's a bard and it might be temporary. So, another person asked in her design what came the easiest and what came the hardest about deciding stuff about her design. I'd say the easiest was her hair color, since I just automatically described her to have a fiery hair color. The hardest, I guess, would be, I don't know, like the more like the inner workings of her mind and personality, because she is such a chaotic and kind of unhinged person. It's a, especially from like a role play aspect, it's a little difficult to get into that mindset and like not make her one note, right? So I feel like that will probably be the hardest thing about her, is to kind of make her more not one dimensional, come up with more things about her that isn't just like a repetition of her being unhinged and stuff. Like so far I've been describing her the same way this entire video, and that's because I haven't really figured out more of the details of her character, because I haven't gotten to that part of the story yet, you know? I'm getting to know this character as I go along. I haven't figured out everything about her yet, which I think is the fun part about solo D&D, because a lot of it comes as a surprise, you know? Is there anything special about her that I really want to share? So I'm not sure if this is even relevant to her anymore in the context of like Mistwind and stuff, but in the first draft I had of her character from the original story, she's actually supposed to be a background character who kind of is the catalyst of like a lot of mysteries in the story, because she actually disappears. And it was like this mixed mystery of like what happened to Eleanor Thorne. You know, where did she go? Did she run away with a suitor? Did she elope with someone? What happened to her? Did she get killed? Whatever. And the truth about it is that she made a deal with a fairy. Yes, there was magic in that original story too. And the truth of her disappearance is that she made a deal with a fairy and was transported to the future, like 2020 or whatever year it was that I came up with all this, because she wanted to escape this restrictive life of a woman in Victorian era London, and she wanted the freedom to be able to, you know, have an occupation, have an education, and that was her thing. To make it even more interesting, when I was writing this story, I made it so that she eventually adopts like 3 kids, and when they grow up, that same fairy comes back and teleports them to the past, to where their mom is from. I don't even know how I can implement any of that into my solo D&D. I'm just trying to kind of separate the characters for now, where it's like they are the same character, but they're not at the same time. They're alternate versions of each other. So I'm still trying to figure out how I can make this Eleanor Thorne from D&D her own without being related to the one that time traveled, right? And I just think that's really interesting, right? Like when I was reading the DM's guide, I really like the paragraph that says like every single campaign that has ever been made in D&D is like an alternate universe of D&D. You know, it's like D&D is just filled with a bunch of alternate universes. I like to think of this version of Eleanor Thorne to just be in this alternate universe, and then in another alternate universe she time traveled, which is very fitting for her character. And I guess this is more of a D&D general question. Another person asked, how many D&D characters have you designed slash created, and which one was your favorite? So I have designed around 3 or 4. I don't know, it's kind of hard to talk about because I've mostly just DM'd. I did make one character who I drew in a previous video. I created a sorcerer. There is Eleanor, who is a bard. There is the person who is going to be her best friend, who I haven't talked about yet, who is a fighter. Then there is this Minotaur barbarian that I made for my campaign with my sister, which I don't know if that counts because I'm the DM for that, and I kind of just made him for her. You know, I'm not actually playing as him, but I made him, like his backstory and everything. I decided everything about him, and she's just controlling him. And I would say my favorite one, it's hard to say because I haven't played them too much. My sorcerer, I've only played her for one session. I guess I'm being a little biased when I say Eleanor so far is my favorite because I've spent the most time with her and I know the most about her. So yeah, I guess she is my favorite. So I'm finally going to talk about her best friend, who is meant to be the second main character in my solo D&D. I didn't want it to be just Eleanor, so I made this guy named Charles Afer Wentworth. He is basically the opposite of Eleanor in terms of personality. The stoic guy, even in his ideals, he's kind of like he's completely fine with the rules of society. He tends to be a rule follower, and that is because he's a duke. So Charles Wentworth is the Duke of Longford, and he's a pretty respected guy. He's a pretty powerful guy, and they are friends because they are childhood friends. And while Eleanor is like, I want to explore the world, I want to break the rules, I don't want to be put into this cage of being a woman, Charles is like, I am a duke and I am going to be a duke. I'm going to do what people expect me to do. I'm going to live up to the expectations of a duke because in his mind, his duties, his job as a duke is important because his actions impact a lot of people's lives. And I'm kind of like, a duke is usually in charge of a certain region of land, like a chunk of land, with tenants. And yeah, a lot of his actions would affect those of like farmers and the people who live on the land that he would call his property. And he kind of he values that a lot. He like likes to maintain an aura of respectability and all that. So he's like that type of character. He's very stoic. He's kind of like the grump and she's the sunshine. And I want their dynamic to be that he is a grump, but his kind of true self is exposed whenever he's with her. And she ends up kind of dragging him along with herself into this world of magic where they both find out about magic, where he might be a little more hesitant to do more things concerning magic and like diving deeper into it. She is like, what do you mean, Charles? Let's go on adventures. She just drags him into it. She drags him into all the trouble that she gets into, and he kind of just has to deal with it. And I just love that dynamic, and I don't know if there's a possible romance with them. So far I'm leaning away from it because I really like the idea of them just being platonic best friends, and they could have different love interests in the future, but who knows, we'll see. Maybe they will have a romance in the future. I'm just gonna have to see where my sessions go and what situations they are put in, because maybe it does turn romantic, who knows. I'm gonna try to avoid it, but you never know, right? You never know. Honestly, talking about them makes me want to like play another session. Instead, I'm gonna talk about kind of what's happened to them so far, right? Maybe gauge the interest of people, because if you guys are interested enough about what's happened to them, maybe I'll talk about it more, and maybe I'll actually turn it into an episodic series. Who knows, right? Just let me know. Just let me know in the comments what you think. In my first session, one of Eleanor's goals was to get men's clothing so that she could dress up as a man and kind of just do whatever it is she was gonna do that day, but as a man. I think she wanted to sneak into like an exclusive men's club, and she wanted to borrow one of her servants a set of clothing, but that didn't work out. And so she ended up having to have a change of plans, and she stole her dad's clothes instead. And so she escaped the house, donning her dad's clothes. And, I rolled like deception checks to see how well her disguise is and stuff. And it's funny because I was trying to figure out also like what she had eaten for breakfast. And I was asking the Oracle, I was like, did she eat bread for breakfast? And I rolled a no. Did she eat soup for breakfast? Rolled a no. And then I asked, did she eat fish for breakfast? And I rolled a nat 20, which is an exceptional yes. So I was like, okay, that means her favorite food is fish. And she loves fish so much that she ate so much fish. And now her breath smells like fish for that day. And, beauty of D&D, right? Like you have this character who's now running around as a man, but with the addition that her breath smells like fish. She got out into the city and I rolled on an urban encounters table just to see what would happen while she was walking around. And then, what do you know? I rolled a life-threatening situation, and I got so scared because I was like, I just started this. I just breathed her into life, and now she's in a life-threatening situation, and she might die. And I got like really scared for a second because she's like level 1. She has like what, like 10 health, and I'm like, what am I gonna do if she dies? You know? Like, she's barely done anything. All she's done is eaten fish, have bad breath, and like dressed up as a man. Like, what am I gonna do if she dies? But the life-threatening situation that I came up with was that a carriage went out of control and started to crash like in her direction, and she rolled a bunch of acrobatic dexterity saving throws, whatever, and she managed to succeed in them because she has high dexterity, and she managed to live, thank goodness. But now I had that situation where I was like, okay, now there's a carriage accident, there's a crash, there's wreckage. How do I make this interesting? So I rolled a bunch on the oracle to see if like, were there any passengers? Does she know the passengers? And it ended up being that she did indeed know the passengers, but they weren't exactly people that she liked. The passengers were these two other women who were kind of like jerks, basically, to her. But one of them was heavily injured, bleeding from the head. Eleanor, she's a good person, and so she made the decision to try and save this person's life, even though she doesn't particularly like them. And so she was calling out for help, and I was like, I need to get Charles in here. And so Charles hears her like yells for help, and he comes and they try to save these people's lives. And it becomes this huge situation. It was kind of high stakes because like I kept asking the oracle like, how severe is this injury? And it kept like, I was like, is this injury really severe? And it was like giving me yes. And I was like, oh gosh, like, is someone gonna die already? Like, it was very like interesting session to say the least. But by the end of it, Charles kind of found himself in a situation where he actually might discover magic because the passenger who was bleeding from her head needed healing. The only way her life could have been saved was magic. This like NPC came. They were able to save her life, but they needed to reveal like healing magic in front of Charles. So there's like this situation now where Charles is finding out about magic and Eleanor isn't with him, which is difficult to explain, but Eleanor hasn't found out about magic at this point in my campaign, but Charles has. The sessions so far have already gone in a direction that is completely different from what I had expected. Because what I expected was, okay, Eleanor's going to find out about magic in Mistwind, and then she's going to tell Charles, and then she's going to drag him into it. But now Charles is finding out about magic first. And, it's a matter of wondering, what is he going to do with this information? Is he going to keep it to himself? Is he going to tell Eleanor? Is she going to find out, separately? Or is she going to find out because of him? There's so many different ways that the story could go, and I can't wait to find out more about it and what could happen. What kind of, like, what are they going to fight first? Because I haven't even done combat yet. It's like all these other characters. It's very exciting just thinking about it, talking about it. Maybe I'll play another session after I finish recording this. But it's just like really exciting. I wish I could talk about it even more, but there's just too much context that I would have to set up where this video would be too long, and it would hardly be about art anymore. It would be about D&D, and it would just be too much. Maybe if I make like a different channel or something or whatever, I could talk about it, but that's a lot of work. But yeah, okay, I'm gonna answer some more questions. So, someone asked, how did I get into D&D? I got into D&D because of Dimension 20. I started watching Dungeons and Drag Queens because I love Bob and Monet, and I watched that entire season, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I started learning more about D&D, and I was just like, I want to try playing it. And then I did. And then I started playing with my sister. And before that, before watching D20, I knew about Critical Role a little bit. I tried to watch Critical Role, but it was a little too overwhelming for me as a person who is completely new to D&D. And so I stopped watching the campaign episodes, and then I just watched Vox Machina. And then I was like, okay, maybe I should try watching the campaign after, knowing more context about Vox Machina, but then it was still difficult for me. I feel like the way that Critical Role is structured, there's a lot of people, they're all kind of like talking over each other, and it's just difficult to get into as a person who's just kind of like trying to learn more. And so I really fell in love with D20. I've watched like a few seasons by now. Still, I'm watching like Unsleeping City right now, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, like watching D20 got me to play D&D. I started a like piratey campaign with my sister where I am the DM and she's the player. And that's a good segue into the next question where a person asked, do you prefer to be the DM or the player? And so far, I've really only gotten experience as the DM, and I do like it. I kind of like having a bunch of information and revealing it to the player and seeing like their reaction to it, seeing what they could do. I just kind of hate the work behind being a DM though. I hate prep. I hate how long it takes to prep. But I am excited to kind of experience being a player more. My sister is interested in trying DMing where, I will be the player. But at the moment, I'm feeling a little too shy to like be in a bigger group of people. But, that's why I like to play solo D&D, because I get to be the player and the DM at the same time. It does sound like counterintuitive, but it is a lot of fun. And I'm enjoying it like tremendously. Another person asked, what is my favorite D&D class? I really like Sorcerer, actually. The first class that I tried was Barbarian, and that is because I was familiar with Barbarian already after playing Baldur's Gate Early Access. So I was like, I don't feel like trying to learn another class. I'm already familiar with Barbarian, so I'm going to try Barbarian. And I tried it, and it's really fun. It's just fun to be like a unga bunga like person who rages and fights, But I started to try out Sorcerer, and it's just fun to be able to do big magic spells. And I think wild magic is really interesting. I feel like it could result in a lot of fun situations. I don't think I could really clearly talk about a favorite class yet because I haven't tried enough of them. And right now I'm trying out Bard with Eleanor, but I'm not even sure if she'll stay a Bard. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe my favorite D&D class will end up being like, I don't know, like Warlock or something, and I don't know enough about subclasses. And just to make this video a little longer, I'm going to talk about the art, because I actually haven't talked about the art at all, like maybe a little bit, but yeah, so this is just a page of Eleanor. When I first drew this, I sketched it on Procreate while watching One Piece, and I intended for it to be traditional art. So I was like, okay, I'm sketching this, and then later on I'll transfer it to my sketchbook and color it with alcohol markers. I was looking at my recent videos and I was like, I haven't really done a digital art video in a while. I should probably do a digital art video. So I changed my mind, and instead of coloring it traditionally, I just switched it over to Clip Studio Paint, and I lined it and I colored it. The intention was to keep it simple, right? Like, oh, let's make this a simple, just character visualization for my solo D&D thing. And so I lined it, I did the flats, and then I just started rendering for some reason, and it turned into this huge, like, over-painting mess, where I was just, like, rendering and rendering and rendering, and I couldn't stop, and then next thing I know, 5 hours had passed. I rendered this entire thing. But the thing that bothers me about it is, like, despite it being rendered, it is still very messy. And halfway through, I was realizing it's gonna look messy no matter what I do. And it's just gonna have that messy aspect. But I was like, oh my god, my hand hurts from rendering. I never want to do this again. Even though it looks really good, but it's like, oh my god, it was just so much work. And I just wanted to draw Eleanor. Like I didn't mean to sit and draw for like 5 hours that day. Honestly, I don't even like the way I filmed it because I was looking back at my older videos and I was thinking like I miss the way I used to film them. It was a lot more angled, a little bit more zoomed out, and it gave more of a feeling of like a relaxing chill vlog, like drawing vlog rather than a drawing demonstration. So I might try and go back to that. I don't know yet. With the angle that I went with this video, it kind of like my hand covers like the drawing a lot and it bothers me. So I might go back to that. But yeah, I'm excited to draw her more. I want to draw her doing actions eventually, like doing scenes that actually happen in the campaign. And now that I've talked about him, people are gonna want to see Charles probably. I haven't totally figured out how I want him to look yet, and I'm still trying to learn how to draw men better. I'm gonna work on that, but I don't know if it'll be a video. Who knows? But I've been having a lot of fun with this. Maybe I'll draw my other D&D characters. I can't talk about them too much because not much has happened about them yet since I haven't played them. I don't know what else to talk about other than please let me know if you're actually interested in learning more about Eleanor and Charles and what happens to them and their stories, because I love sharing this stuff with you guys. I love knowing what you think about it. I just keep thinking about like maybe this is finally the gateway that I've been like looking for to sharing my characters' stories. Because if this works out, I might be able to do like turn Sydney and Jules and Isabella and their stories. I might be able to turn their stories into a solo D&D thing where I talk about it, because writing takes too much time and I love talking. It's why I have a YouTube channel. It's because I love talking. So let me know if you are interested in that and I'll see what I can do with it. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to all of this if you did. And let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. Hopefully I don't lose my voice because I can feel it. Goodbye.